This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources. Consistent with its Running Right process, Alpha is an energy company committed to being a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward. We fuel progress around the world. More information at alphanr.com.
The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Information at vachamber.com. Virginia hospitals and health systems provide jobs. They support our economy and promote public health. Local hospitals are always open to help people with unexpected health needs. Having a stable healthcare network is vital. Virginia hospitals are our lifeline.
It's amazing what my students with special needs can accomplish. Their pride is priceless. That's why I teach.
Brought to you by the Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome back to Secretary Molly Ward, Secretary of Natural Resources, Clyde Cristman, the Director of the Department of Conservation and Recreation. Appreciate your being on. It's been too long, but we're glad that you're back. I'm glad that you can give us some update about what's happening in your secretariat, what's happening in your department. I'll tell our viewers that we're having this conversation just before something very exciting here in the region with the bike races. That'll be happening, and we may make some reference to that, but by the time they're seeing it, they will have read about and will have seen about all of these exciting things happening here in the capital city. So, Madam Secretary, you start us, and Clyde, jump right in and tell us what's happening.
Well, in the Secretariat as a whole, we remain focused on land conservation and water quality issues. And we have a Deputy Secretary for the Chesapeake Bay that works on bay issues full-time. And, of course, land conservation is tied into water quality issues as well. You know, the new Chesapeake Bay Act agreement that the governor signed last June calls for over 2 million acres in the Bay watershed to be protected. So we're constantly working with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, which is in our Secretariat, with regards to those issues.
And in your department?
Well, directly related to that, as you know, the Commonwealth finished off a very robust fiscal year here at the end of June 30th, and that produced about $61.7 million that will be available for funding for water quality projects. And so we're working, we actually just came from a meeting this morning where we were talking about how we're going to recommend to the governor for those funds to be allocated towards agricultural pest management practices, wastewater treatment, plant upgrades, local stormwater projects, a lot of good things going on to try to meet our goals in the Chesapeake Bay Agreement.
We were talking before we started the show about the state parks and that you've been to practically every one of them, the governor too. Tell us some about what's happening in state parks and even some that are coming online.
Well, yeah, I've actually been to all 36 state parks plus the 5 land bank parks, and Clyde and I are working with the administration to try to see if we can get those open. We've got some soft openings coming up. Clyde has a great vision, I believe, to do partial openings. You know, we've got this land that is owned by the public and is for the public and was intended for public access for Virginians and tourists alike to recreate there. So we don't need, you know, $1 million visitor centers and asphalt parking lots. We can get by with maybe some gravel parking lots and some other forms of access, because it's better to have people out there enjoying the property than you create a friends group and a local constituency that supports the park, and also, you know, they self-police the property and make sure that there's no poaching or anything like that going on. So we've been working on that, and we'll be working with the General Assembly on budget proposals, and we hope to see those parks get open.
We're talking about bikes before we started too, and bike trails in some of those parks probably are really popular.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, while we sit here doing this interview, my colleague Joe Elton is down at Pocahontas State Park, where they're doing the ribbon cutting now for our Richmond Ride Center, which we have a mountain bike network of trails down there that's been recognized by the International Mountain Bike Association. And if you're a mountain biker, you know that's really a big deal. And I think it's going to be a total of 35 miles of mountain bike trails between Pocahontas State Park and then also with our partners at James River City Park, the Richmond City Park here in downtown Richmond, which has some of the best mountain bike trails around.
And if some of our viewers haven't been to Pocahontas State Park and you're talking about mountain trails, they'd be surprised perhaps to know that that's not very far from Richmond. It's not in the southwest mountains or the northwest mountains. It's right here in this region.
Yeah, it's less than 30 minutes away.
Yes.
Yeah, and another great biking opportunity is at High Bridge Trail State Park near Farmville. That bike trail is 25 or 30 miles long. It goes through a series of towns, and of course the iconic High Bridge itself. It's quite beautiful, and it's a great place to go with the family to get a long ride in.
That's one that I haven't seen, and I've read about that bridge and all. I'm excited to see that one.
Yeah, it's worth the trip to Farmville. It really, really is. It's a beautiful. You can walk across it if you don't want to bike across it. It's about a mile, and it's quite stupendous.
Have the numbers come out yet on visitors to the state parks? Because I know that usually that's been jumping up every year, the number of people.
We are still seeing very solid visitation. Last year, I think our total tally was about 8.7 million, and as we get the numbers in and massage them to make sure everything's accurate and we're not double counting everything. And so we're hoping, and I think that the trend's continuing, that we probably will eclipse 9 million visitors this year. We've had a great string of beautiful weekends here, and that really helps out a lot. One of the challenges that we face is we unfortunately on some of the holiday weekends have found ourselves having to close the gate at several parks even as early as 11 or 12 o'clock because the parks have just gotten to be over capacity. It's not a bad problem to have, but I think it speaks volumes to our need to have additional places for people to go for outdoor recreation. For example, Westmoreland, one of our flagship state parks in Westmoreland, I think 4 separate occasions this year we've had to shut the gate down before noon because we just got to the point where there's no parking left, there's no restroom facilities available. So it's a bad decision to have to make, but hopefully if we can get some of these other land bank parks that Secretary Ward mentioned open to the public. We've got actually Widewater State Park that we are designing right now and hope to be in construction for that very soon. We do have funding for that from the General Assembly. Most recently, Secretary Ward mentioned trying to do getting some of these parks open on a lower scale basis. We got an appropriation from the General Assembly last year for $2.25 million for the Seven Bends State Park up in Shenandoah County, and that's one of our first priorities to try to get that park, get some hiking trails and gravel parking lots and some minimum staff on the ground so that we can get that one open to the public within the next year. We have Mayo River State Park down in Henry County that we're working to come up with a plan. Had staff down there last week working to figure out how we can hopefully get that open to the public. The governor wants to cut some ribbons on some state parks, and so we're working feverishly to make that happen.
We also have some new cabins going in soon at a variety of different state parks, and last year the General Assembly also appropriated money for yurts. For the state park system.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a yurt at Kiptopeke State Park.
I remember the discussion
Right.
on that because the legislators were saying, what is that?
Right, exactly. And the yurt at Kiptopeke is just really beautiful. I highly recommend it. It's right on the Chesapeake Bay, and it's furnished inside. It even has a refrigerator. It's really, really lovely. I've stayed there myself, and we took the governor and first lady there and had lunch there out in front of the yurt. But we can create a sort of glamping experience for Virginians and visitors with these yurts, and we hope to have some up by next spring.
Well, and I know people need to make reservations. I guess they can't make a reservation to enter the park. They just need to show up, I guess. But as far as accommodations, they need to be made early.
Right. If actually one of the most difficult complaints that I had to deal with since I was director of DCR was a woman who has taken her family on Memorial Day weekend to First Landing State Park for decades. And this past year, they went, we allow reservations 11 months ahead of time, and she went on about 10 and a half months ahead of time, and we were already booked solid for that weekend. She called wanting to know what we could do about it, but obviously we take the reservations on first come, first serve. So 11 months ahead of time, call and make your reservations for your cabins. Another interesting thing we've done this year, brand new, that we piloted, and the response has been really solid. It used to be that you could not reserve a specific campsite. You could make a reservation for a campsite,
Yes,
so you were
right.
guaranteed you'd have a campsite, and then it was first come, first served. So we have piloted it this year, and we're getting a very favorable response from the public that they can actually reserve their favorite campsite. But then again, you got to do that early because the favorite campsites get taken really quickly.
Something else that I think is really great that they're doing is every Thursday on their Facebook and Twitter feed for the Department of Conservation and Recreation and Virginia State Parks, they have, if there's any cabins left for that weekend, you can go online and figure out you get 25% off, and they'll tell you what parks still have availability. So on Thursday afternoon, it's a great thing to check if you want to go someplace for the weekend. Go check out the Virginia State Parks Facebook page or Twitter feed.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned the Twitter feeds, because I don't use it as much as perhaps I should, and certainly not as much as I could. But the ones that I see are from the state parks. I mean, and they are really fantastic. And we'd encourage people, if they're at all using Twitter, that they get those particular tweets that come, so they will know about what's happening on the.
Right, because it's not only, people don't realize there's a lot of special events that happen in the parks on a regular basis. So on any given weekend, if you go to a state park, there might be a geocaching event or a canoeing event or a midnight, astronomy event. There might be something else going on. So it's always great to check out those Twitter feeds because they tell you those cool special events that are always going on. And in that regard, Staunton River State Park just got their dark sky designation. They're one of only 50, I think, places in the world that have gotten that designation for being great nighttime viewing places. And they have a dark sky party coming up. I think it's this weekend. Is it this weekend?
I think that's right.
Where they'll have astronomers from all over the country and all over the world come to Staunton River to stargaze.
Wow. Well, now, with fall coming on, beautiful foliage, whatever part of the state, as you move on through the winter months, some of the parks still accessible, available year-round, or do some actually have to close because of?
All of our parks are available year-round. Some of our facilities we have to close down. The camping loops we close down mainly because of the water lines freezing and whatnot. But
Right.
we keep them open as late as we can. And I tell you, our parks to the west are very, very popular. Really, some of their prime season is October. At parks like Hungry Mother and Douthit State Park, where the foliage is just phenomenal. Another one of our great places to ride a bike too, the New River Trail State Park's 58-mile long trail, and you can ride the whole thing by bicycle, or you can horseback ride, or you can do a variety of canoe, kayaking, horseback riding, hiking, and biking. You can do the whole thing in one of those different ways of travel.
Yes. Well, to think about.
I'm glad it's not me.
It sounds like someone's calling for a state park.
They're calling for a reservation.
Yeah, if you're calling for the state park, call the office number. Thinking about the other departments, this is a key one in having Clyde here with you, but with the other departments that you have, whether it's historic resources or environmental quality, take another one of those and give us some update.
Well, the Department of Environmental Quality, for instance, is working very closely with the Department of Conservation and Recreation on that Water Quality Improvement Fund surplus that Clyde was talking about, because we have non-point source pollution problems for the bay, meaning mostly agriculture, and we also have point source problems, which are largely sewage treatment facilities, and both of those have to be addressed. So part of that is in Clyde's department, and part of it in David Paler at DEQ handles the point source problem. So we have to we have to negotiate peace among the brothers there in terms of how we spend that money and how we prioritize what we're going to spend money on, because we've got those 2017 Bay milestones coming up that we have to meet, and we've still got a little bit of heavy lifting to do before then. Department of Historic Resources, things are going very well there. You know, their historic tax credit program has been just, you know, a major boon to communities all over the Commonwealth. You can see what it does for architectural restoration in downtown Richmond. You know, any day of the week, all these buildings that are being renovated are the benefit of historic tax credit programs. So that is really exciting. And of course, they're the stewards for, they're the State Historic Preservation Officer, so they're the stewards for all the national landmarks, et cetera, in the Commonwealth through the federal government. The Virginia Marine Resources Commission is seeing, continue to see just an explosion in oyster aquaculture and in the oyster industry in general. We've gone from 20,000 bushels 10 years ago to over 500,000 bushels last year. And that's being done both through, as I said, aquaculture, and just the bay conditions are better and the salinity conditions are better for oyster farming. So that's really exciting and excellent news. And of course, we also have the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries in our secretariat. And, you know, those folks are the stewards of public lands and wildlife management areas, and are some of our biggest fans for the land conservation work we do. So we work with all of those agencies and try to, we love all our children equally. So all those agencies are important.
And you know, any number of those that you mentioned, maybe not everyone, are somewhat tied into tourism in Virginia too.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
whether it's the oysters or whether it's the historic buildings that are here in Richmond and throughout the Commonwealth that really become tourist attractions.
Absolutely. Those aesthetics are so important when people are deciding where to go. And having a charming downtown somewhere that maybe is suffering in the Southwest somewhere from you know, lack of coal jobs, et cetera. You know, tourism is one of the things that we can help them with. So you get the historic tax credit programs going up, you get people renovating buildings and bringing in small businesses. We help them with the state parks nearby, so there's an attraction to come to that place. And pretty soon we're giving them an economic engine back. So that's the goal.
The renovations that are taking place around Capitol Square, any number of those are, I guess, are historic buildings too, and that really, it preserves them while at the same time probably creating a challenge for in the renovations of them.
Absolutely, it is a challenge, but what an amazing way to reuse, recycle, and preserve.
Yes.
And it's so important to our fabric as a community and on behalf of the Commonwealth.
Well, now, down is it in Danville or Martinsville that there's also a museum there that kind of falls somewhat within your.
Oh, that's true.
Your bailiwick
yeah, they're
too.
Joe Keeper there is gonna call me later and say, you did forget one of your children. Yeah, the Virginia Museum.
Oh, you didn't forget. You had to pause for breath.
I forgot one of the acronyms.
Yeah, right.
The Virginia Museum of Natural History, yes, in Martinsville, is an amazing asset and is also worth the trip. And is an amazing place to go. They've got a paleontology exhibit there and a lot of exhibits there. It's a big draw for that town. It's a very, very important part of Martinsville and the state's fabric. I think the largest, the collection they have there of species and plants is fascinating.
Well, let me ask you a question that's not about your agency so much, but you had great experience in local government, mayor of the city of Hampton. How is it the time now that you've had to make the transition to being also a cabinet secretary for governors and for Governor McCullough?
Well, you know, I think the best experience that you can have to have this job is being a mayor, because I feel like I'm the mayor of natural resources.
Yes.
You know, because there's a certain amount of getting smart on like a ton of different subjects, and then relying on staff to really have the in the weeds expertise, because you couldn't possibly get smart on all of these topics. And then there's a certain ceremonial aspect to the job, you know, appearing on behalf of the governor and on behalf of the agencies at events and giving speeches and getting your picture taken and handing out awards. There's part of that job too. Also, you know, as a mayor, you're managing the council and different political points of view, and you know, that's obviously at play here in Richmond. So I feel like it really did prepare me for the job.
Clyde, your experience has been in a variety of settings in state government and even prior to that. How is it being a director of conservation and natural resources?
Well, I tell you, it's a very, very diverse agency, and I knew a lot about this agency as I had worked on their budget for about 12 years between my time with House Appropriations and Senate Finance. But I've learned, I continue to learn how diverse the agency is and how diverse our mission is. It is quite a challenge. We have so many different things going on. We talk a lot about state parks, but in addition to the state parks, we have 63 natural area preserves that cover about 55,000 acres. And while they're not as well known, because our mission there is protecting the rare and endangered plants and species and ecosystems that exist at those sites. And we do provide public access to those sites, just not as on the same level we do with state parks. In addition, we have our Soil and Water Conservation Division, which distributes this year about $25 million in funding to farmers for agricultural best management practices that prevent runoff of sediment and nitrogen and phosphorus into state waters. We have our Dam Safety Division, which we regulate over 2,000 dams in Virginia, and as part of that division too, we also do floodplain management work. And then we have our Planning and Recreational Resources Division, which provides grant funding to local governments, does master planning for state parks. And then we also have our Office of Environmental Education. So it is a very diverse agency. It keeps me busy.
It's sort of like you're mayor of the department.
That's a way of describing it.
Yes. Now, I think when we had a conversation, had an opportunity to have you all on before, I made the compliment then, which I'll make again. I think that the website that the department has, and we're going to have the address up as well as the website address for the Secretariat, but the department, with all the information you provide there, it's if it's second to anyone, it's only tourism, as far as the breadth of information that's there for people who are interested in seeing the Commonwealth.
Well, thank you for that compliment, and but we don't like to be number two, so we're in the process of looking to revamp our website, so hopefully it'll be better than tourism's.
Well, yes, and that was not meant to be a slight, but if it's 2 out of 100, it's still good.
Actually, I'll use that, though, to mention that one of the exciting things we're working on now is the new partnership that we are working with the Virginia Tourism Corporation, and as well as 5 other state agencies, looking to see how we can work to improve all of our marketing. If we're marketing Virginia as a tourism destination, then we should be marketing our state parks as part of that. And so we're going to be looking at working with tourism to do some international marketing, something that we have never done before, as well as some more robust marketing in those markets in New England and Ohio and wherever we can get people to come to the Commonwealth of Virginia and enjoy our great natural resources.
That interagency and intersecretariat cooperation is so very, very important. Like if you just take oysters, for example, that touches on tourism, it touches on agriculture, and
Right.
it touches on the VMRC. So, it's really important that you cross the hall and go work with other people in state government for success.
Well, it's exciting that you're going to be doing all that marketing with tourism. I probably assumed that you were doing that was happening, so that's exciting. But we'll have to tell viewers they better get their reservations made early.
That's right.
Then, if it's really going to be a wider market of people who'll be looking at our state parks as a destination.
And the natural heritage areas, really is an unknown resource to a certain extent. As Clyde said, there's limited time, some of them, that you can access them, but a lot of them have public parking and amazing facilities and really stupendously, particularly beautiful places in the Commonwealth. And I would really encourage people to go on the DCR website and figure out what natural areas are open to the public, and many of those, or if not all of them, are worth a trip. And a lot of people don't realize that they're accessible to the public.
2016 session coming up, other than in hopes that the General Assembly will allocate funds that are needed and the governor's budget and so forth, are there other matters that you're seeing as a secretariat that will need to be addressed, that people should start supporting and working on?
Well, we're hopeful that the General Assembly will consider approving a general obligation bond for parks, and among other things. So that's one thing we would love for the public to support. People love our state parks and support our state parks, but we do have some aging infrastructure, and we also have some needs with regards to the parks that aren't open. And the cabins and other facilities that generate revenue are really contribute to the state budget and help offset the Department of Conservation and Recreation's budget. I think that the statistic is something like it used to be 40% revenue, 40% of the revenue was the budget, and now it's 60. So they've flipped those numbers from 40-60 to 60-40, and so every time we build a cabin, it makes money for the Department of Conservation and Recreation. It helps lower the amount of taxes that they need to collect to support the department.
Secretary Ward, thank you so much for being on This Week in Richmond.
Thank you.
Wish we had longer. Clyde, thank you very much, and we look forward to having another conversation with you.
Sounds great. Thanks for having us.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources, a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward.
The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community. For jobs, the economy, and public health, Virginia Hospitals, our lifeline.
The Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.